After 15 years of suffering horribly, I was helped by a doctor in 30 minutes. Because I paid privately. Sitting here in floods of tears and so angry, but also relieved. Need to talk to others who've been through similar. I live in the UK and have endometriosis and adenomyosis, diagnosed in my early 20s. Almost 15 years ago, when I was 25, I'd had multiple surgeries, been on almost every hormone treatment, and needed morphine to get through the day. I was put on a powerful drug that induces pseudomenopause. I stayed on it for 2 years, with no HRT. Both are expressly against the guidance for prescribing, which I didn't know at the time. I started suffering instantly but figured that it was just a side effect of the medication. I figured when I stopped, the side effects would go away. So I came off the drug in 2009, but the side effects did not go away. I was in pain all over, especially my joints and back. I was so fatigued I could no longer work. I had no sex drive at all, by which I mean I couldn't stand to be touched at all, and the thought of sex made me feel ill. My hair was falling out. I couldn't regulate my body temperature. I felt like I was being poisoned. I spoke to every doctor I saw about this. The most I got was a sorry to hear that, usually just a shrug. Occasionally they'd run some blood tests but they'd be normal, so there was nothing wrong with me. They diagnosed me with then fibromyalgia, ignoring the symptoms that didn't fit. I insisted on referrals to rheumatology and back to gynecology, but the referrals were refused. After about 5 years, suddenly one day, it was like a switch flipped in my brain. My sex drive came back, fatigue improved, and I had excess energy even. For about 2 days. Then the switch turned back off. Next month, the same again. And again. Then I started to realize it correlated with ovulation. Then it stopped coming back. I'd get maybe 2 to 4 days like this every 6 months for a few years. But the rest of the time the symptoms were worsening. Doctors would just say, "But you have me. You're bound to be tired." I'd go through phases where I would desperately ask for help, determined to get to the bottom of it. And then after being treated like a hysterical woman so many times, I would give up. I ended up getting pregnant on a rare occasion where I had any sex drive. We had twins and both of them are disabled. For the past nearly 6 years my health has not been a priority. I've been going downhill but have been so overwhelmed with their needs. Every time I saw a doctor, I asked again. They tell me there's no way it can be related to a drug that I took more than a decade ago. They offer me antidepressants and say I need to accept that this is my life. A few years ago I had enough. I went Googling and found, no exaggeration, hundreds of stories like mine about the same type of drug. Some of these stories date back years before I was on it. I found 0 studies investigating these issues. I found one single study that suggested a fair number of women on these meds don't regain normal estrogen levels for years afterward. That was it. I couldn't find a single study, journal piece, or anything from an expert on this issue, just articles about women suffering and nobody caring to find out why. Doctors still refused to do more detailed blood work, so I paid for them myself. What would happen is that I would pay for tests and they'd show something up, high thyroid stimulating hormone, or estrogen below the normal range. The GP would begrudgingly repeat the test and it would be normal. My estrogen was well below range, so the GP repeated it at a different point in my cycle. The normal range for that phase was something like 150, 1100. Mine was something like 156 and therefore was fine. They wouldn't repeat the test. Then they started accusing me of having health anxiety and that getting my blood tests done was making me ill, the irony. I said my TSH level on this private test was 5.95, that should be enough for a trial of treatment according to NICE guidelines. They'd say, well now it's only 2, and we refuse to treat you for a problem you don't have. Why don't you take these antidepressants? I started looking for a private gynecologist. I spoke to the secretaries of around 20. They told me none of them had sufficient knowledge of female hormones and to try an endocrinologist. So I spoke to a crapload of endocrinologist secretaries. None of them had sufficient knowledge of female hormones. Fucking consultants in hormones don't know enough about women's hormones? I asked if they had any experiences of NERS causing low estrogen or thyroid issues and whether they'd consider a trial of treatment. I was told not unless your TSH is above 10. The UK cutoff for diagnosis is stupidly high, and they wouldn't give HRT unless my period stopped. I saw the endometriosis nurse recently who put me on the list for a hysterectomy. I explained all this history and asked if she knew anything about it. No. After years of battling, a friend went through premature ovarian insufficiency and found an amazing private menopause clinic. I'm not menopausal, but I figured they may know to try to help me. I had my first appointment today, with one of their GPs. It's the first time in over 15 years that a doctor has sat and listened to me. She listened to me cry about the way my life has self-destructed, the symptoms I've had since I was 25, the things I've tried to do to get help, and how nobody has ever tried to help. Within half an hour she told me that my symptoms were the same as women she treats every day for premature ovarian insufficiency. She wanted to speak to the consultant in charge to check on HRT doses to make sure it wouldn't exacerbate my endometriosis. She prescribed estrogen patches, a small amount of progesterone, and testosterone, which will all arrive on Monday. She also said she would be happy to trial treatment of thyroid medication once I'm on the hormones if I'm still having symptoms, because symptoms tell you more than blood tests. How amazing that a private GP recognizes this and an NHS one does not. It has cost me more than our mortgage for the month to get seen and get the HRT. 15 fucking years of begging doctors to help me, and being dismissed, and all I needed to do was throw some money at it. I've wasted half my 20s and all of my 30s being ill. I lost my career, my social life. My marriage has suffered, as has my parenting. I'm desperately hoping that it works, but at the same time, if I could have felt better for the last 15 years for the sake of some fucking HRT, I'm going to be furious. I don't know if it will work at all. Time will tell, but at least I can try. Why are so many women expected to just tolerate health issues that are ruining their lives? Why is there no research being done into the long-term effects of these drugs reported by so many? The simple answer is that it's money, but I'm sure it's more than that though. Sorry, this is so long, I just needed to get this off my chest. My mom, who died nearly 7 years ago from stomach and ovarian cancer, suffered for years with vaginal mesh before they finally acknowledged it was dangerous. Her cancer wasn't diagnosed until stage 4. She was told her symptoms were IBS. New IBS in your 50s? Not a thing. Took me 10 years to get my endometriosis diagnosed. I cannot handle this shit anymore. I know that for any American readers, you have no option but to pay for health insurance or pay privately, so I know we are fortunate to have the NHS at all. It's just infuriating that this doctor today didn't do anything that any one of the GPs I've seen over the years couldn't have done. And when there's universal healthcare, it shouldn't be necessary